You know, those cases that make you kind of stop and go, wait, what?
Right.
This whole Sean Diddy Combs thing. It's one of those right
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
And, you're not here for just like the surface level stuff.
yeah.
You want to go deeper,
Right.
which is why you're here with me, of course, to help us unpack all of it,
Yes.
is
Absolutely.
our expert.
Yeah, it's a case with, definitely more layers than your average
Cool.
celebrity
Yeah.
scandal. When you see, racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking next to a name like Diddy's,
Yeah,
it's gonna turn some heads.
absolutely. So we're talking about these alleged freak-offs. What can you tell us about what we're actually talking about when we talk about the accusations?
So the allegations basically revolve around these parties.
Okay.
These elaborate parties that some are alleged to have lasted for hours,
Wow.
that allegedly involved commercial sex workers. And the accusations against Diddy range from being a participant in these parties to possibly even filming these encounters.
Oh, wow.
And the prosecution is alleging that coercion was involved.
Right. Which is where things get really serious.
Yeah, okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. But the big question on my mind, and probably on a lot of people's minds, is if these accusations are so serious,
Right.
why is Diddy even fighting for bail? Shouldn't he be considered a flight risk?
Well, you would think so, right?
Right.
But this is actually his third attempt to get released before the trial.
Wow.
And we're talking a $50 million bail package, house arrest, you name it, he's offered it.
He's really pulling out all the stops.
But there's a legal strategy at play here.
Okay.
You see, by repeatedly seeking and being denied bail, his legal team
Mm-hmm.
is essentially building an argument for appeal. They're saying, look, they're establishing this pattern of what they believe is unfair detention.
So they're playing the long game here.
Exactly.
But if he's offering all this, why are the judges still saying no?
2 words, witness tampering.
Hmm.
The prosecution is arguing that with Diddy's wealth and influence,
Right.
he could easily interfere with the case,
Oh, wow.
even from home.
And the scary part is the burden of proof for that claim
Yeah.
is surprisingly low.
Oh, really?
And we've seen this argument stick in other high-profile cases involving wealthy individuals, even when the evidence seemed circumstantial at best.
That's a really good point, because Combs' lawyers are saying that these contacts were all related to civil lawsuits,
Right.
and they stopped as soon as the criminal investigation began.
Right. So they're saying, look, he's not a threat.
Yeah.
They're trying to paint this picture of a man who, upon learning about the investigation,
Yeah.
immediately ceased any potentially problematic communication.
Right.
It's the classic tactic to sort of undermine the prosecution's narrative by poking holes in their timeline,
Right.
highlighting inconsistencies.
So how strong is that argument, really? Because it's got to be an uphill battle to fight pretrial detention,
It is.
especially based on just allegations.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. At this stage, it's all about convincing the judge that there's enough evidence to warrant detention. And unfortunately for Combs, the prosecution only needs to demonstrate a possibility of witness tampering.
Right.
They don't need concrete proof.
Oh, wow.
That's a very low bar
Yeah.
to clear.
Wow. Which kind of brings up the question of, like, when is this thing even going to, like, go to trial?
Right now, the tentative date is May 5th, 2025.
Wow.
So,
It's a ways off.
yeah, it's a ways off. But given the sheer volume of evidence that's involved,
Right.
it's really not all that surprising.
That's true. We're talking about, what was it, like 96 devices they seized from Combs' homes?
Right.
How much data are we talking about?
So one device alone reportedly had 90 terabytes of data.
90? What is that? Like, how much is that?
So to put that into perspective for something, you think about filling up thousands of standard laptops
Oh, my God.
with information. That's the scale that we're talking about. And it's not just about the quantity.
Right.
It's about what they might find on those devices.
Right, because it could be nothing, or it could be like the smoking gun, right?
Exactly. You don't know. And so the prosecution is going to be combing through all of that, looking for any shred of evidence that they can use to build their case.
Which could lead to even more charges, right?
Absolutely. This massive amount of data needs to be analyzed. It needs to be cataloged, assessed for relevance.
Right.
And all of that takes time.
Yeah.
And it also opens up the possibility of what we call a superseding indictment,
What's that?
which basically means that the prosecution could actually bring additional charges based on what they discover
Wow.
during the course of their investigation.
So this thing could balloon.
It could absolutely snowball.
Wow. And then there's the whole thing with that leaked video, the hotel hallway video from 2016.
Right.
Combs' team is not happy about that. They're saying that it was leaked by someone from Homeland Security.
That's right. And they're saying that that leak
Yeah.
and other leaks that they claim exist amount to prejudicial pretrial publicity,
Right.
which could taint the jury pool and really threaten Combs' right to a fair trial.
Because it's already sort of putting this narrative out there
Yeah.
before any facts are presented in court.
It's like trying to unring a bell once that information is out there.
Right.
It's very, very difficult to kind of erase it from people's minds.
So are they right? I mean, do they have a point?
Well, to be fair to the defense, high-profile cases like this
Yeah.
are often plagued by leaks, sometimes intentional, sometimes not.
Right.
Now, whether they can prove that this particular leak came from Homeland Security
Yeah.
and was a deliberate attempt to harm his case,
Right.
that's a whole other can of worms.
Right, because the prosecution is saying, no way, this is baseless.
Exactly. They're denying it completely.
Yeah, and they're saying this is just an attempt to exclude important evidence from the trial.
Right. They're saying we need this video as evidence.
Yeah.
This is a key piece of evidence.
Wow. So it's like we're watching two different narratives being constructed here, right? Like one in the courtroom
Absolutely.
and then one out here for everyone else.
That's exactly right. And it's something that we see time and time again in cases like this that involve celebrities because you have that kind of added layer of public interest.
Yeah.
And the question becomes, how much weight will the jury give
Right.
to information that they may have seen or heard outside of the courtroom?
Right. And with instructions to disregard it because
Exactly.
it's so hard not to, right? Like if you hear
You
something,
can't just unhear it.
Wow.
It's very, very difficult.
especially when social media just amplifies everything.
Absolutely. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire.
Right.
It just explodes.
It makes you wonder if that's why the judge is requesting this gag order
Right.
for both sides.
It's an interesting tactic, right?
It's
It's like
interesting.
they're trying to contain the wildfire
Yeah.
by limiting what can be said about the case publicly.
So no more like going on TMZ and making comments about the case.
Well, that's the irony, right? Because Combs-led counsel
Right.
went on TMZ and basically accused the government of targeting Combs because he's a successful black man.
Right.
So that's a pretty bold statement to make.
Yeah, it was a bold statement.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, well,
So now the judge is saying,
no,
okay,
you can't talk about it.
everybody pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Let's take a step back
Right.
and figure out how we're going to control the flow of information.
So both sides have to agree to this gag order.
That's the thing.
Wow.
Both sides have to agree on the terms of it.
Which could be really difficult.
It could be very difficult because they're coming at it from two different angles.
Right.
The prosecution wants to protect the integrity of the case.
Right.
The defense wants to make sure that their client is getting a fair shake.
Yeah, it's a fair trial.
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you think it'll even work? Like, is a gag order even going to do anything at this point?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, public opinion is a fickle thing. And in this day and age,
It's hard to control.
it's incredibly difficult to control that narrative once it's out there.
Right. And in the meantime, you have Diddy sitting in jail
Right.
awaiting trial.
Mhm.
And his family's there.
Mm.
You know, they're showing up for him, his mother, his children. They were all at that last hearing.
Which is, it's incredibly important,
Yeah.
especially considering the toll that incarceration can take on a person.
Of course.
That support system can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. Our correspondent actually mentioned that Diddy seemed different.
Really?
Yeah, than his public persona.
Interesting.
Like much more subdued,
Mhm.
more introspective.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what's going through his mind.
Right. What's he thinking about?
Right.
It's easy to forget sometimes that celebrities are human beings too.
That's right.
They
And
experience
they have families.
they experience the same range of emotions,
Yeah.
and facing charges like this
Yeah.
has to be incredibly daunting,
Right.
even for someone who's used to being in the spotlight.
So we have a lot of things happening here. We've got a mountain of data,
A ton of data.
a potential gag order,
Right.
this really divided public opinion,
Yeah.
and a man who's, facing charges that could drastically change his life.
Absolutely.
Where do we even go from here?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
And unfortunately, there's no easy answer. But
Right.
one thing's for sure, this case, it has far-reaching implications.
It does.
Not just for Sean Diddy Combs, but for how we view accountability justice. The line between public persona and private actions,
Yeah.
all of that is at stake here.
And it's interesting you say that about like the public persona versus the private actions, because one thing I've noticed is it's been pretty quiet from the music industry.
Right.
You'd think that with someone as influential as Diddy,
Mm-hmm.
there'd be a little more people coming to his defense or at least saying something publicly in support.
Yeah, well, it's kind of speaks to this larger shift we're seeing. I
Yeah.
think that this kind of reckoning within industries that have historically protected their own, especially powerful men.
Yeah.
In this case, with, these accusations
Mhm.
and the hashtag Me Too movement looming in the background,
Yeah.
it's got to be tough, for people to come out and support him without potentially facing a backlash themselves.
Yeah, it's like they're afraid to get caught on the wrong side of this.
Exactly.
Yeah. But what does that mean for Diddy's defense, though?
Yeah.
I mean, can he really afford to have public opinion in his own industry turn against him?
Well, that's the tightrope his legal team has to walk, right? They need to defend him in court.
Right.
But they also have to be very, very careful about how they navigate the court of public opinion,
Yeah.
because any move they make could be perceived as trying to influence the jury,
Right.
which is why this whole DAG order thing is so fascinating.
Yeah.
It could actually work in their favor
Really?
by creating this kind of informational vacuum
Okay.
that they can then fill.
So less is more in this case.
In a way, yeah.
Absolutely.
Don't-
Wow. And then there's a human element to all of this, too. We talk about his family being there,
Right.
but I keep thinking about what his mother, Janice Combs, said.
Mm-hmm.
She believes that assault case from before,
Yeah.
Was settled just to protect his image,
Right.
which, if that's true,
Yeah.
that adds a whole other layer to this.
It does. It really makes you think about the role of wealth and power in all of this.
Yeah.
Was justice really served in that previous case, or was it just damage control?
Right.
And if it was damage control, could that decision come back to haunt him now?
Wow.
These are the questions that are going to be on everyone's mind as this case moves forward.
It's true. It's like a reminder that no matter how much money you have,
Right.
how much influence you have,
Hmm.
you can't outrun everything.
The past has a way of catching up with you.
It does.
Hmm.
And the truth always seems to find a way of coming out.
It always does. And for Sean Diddy Combs, that truth is going to be decided in a courtroom?
That's right. Where the stakes couldn't be higher.
Absolutely.
Well, there you have it. The charges, the evidence, the legal strategy, the cultural context. We've laid it all out here for you. But as you go about your day, here's something to consider. What if Diddy's mother's right? What if that previous case really was settled just to protect his image? Does that change how you view things now? Does it raise questions about accountability? Not just for Diddy, but for the system itself, and how it seems to favor the wealthy and powerful. We've given you a lot to think about. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you on the next Deep Dive.